And welcome to another lore tour here at DefenseCon 2954. So hopefully all of that got in here. But yeah, it's a lore tour for DefenseCon. And it's as whenever DefenseCon comes up, it's the only time you'll see me outside of, like, say, painting content that I do on the Astropub, outside of the uniform, because I have to represent Drake, which is why I have the hat and everything. And I know it's reversed, but don't question it. But welcome, everybody. Welcome. This is the AstroHistorian lore tours. This is what I do when we go when Star Citizen has events on the floor. So what we do is I go through the floors, through the floor, and tell you about the manufacturers on the floor of any event, and then of course the lore behind those ships. And if you're catching this for the first time, hello, my name is Paul, Berserker1, Batman, Shelley, your humble host and space bartender at the Astropub, and your professor at the AstroHistorian, where we cover lore of space games and more. So make sure you hit that follow button if you haven't already done so, if you've been watching these. And if you do enjoy this video, remember to hit that like button, because it does help tell YouTube that you enjoy these content, and you'll be able to see more of my content in the future. And comment down below, as always, with your thoughts on what we see on the floor and everything else like that. So as you can see, we have people in front of me. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pull open my Moby. I'm going to now go to comms, and I'm going to disband the party. There we go. So now we have nice, clean visuals. All right. So let's get started with a little bit of background for lore, for Drake. So Drake Interplanetary was founded in 2845. Now the big story comes from the what the UEE was called the Volks Fighter. Now, to give you some context for this time. 2840s is sort of the rebuilding years, in the middle of those rebuilding years for the UEE. The UEE was still kind of introducing new ships like the Hercules and the Hornet. A lot of ships that were replacing, new ships were replacing the older Aegis ships after the fall of the Mezzers. So the UEE still hadn't really gotten back onto its feet. As far as we know, some of the last vestiges of the Mezzer rule wasn't kicked out until the end of the 2800s and the early 2810s. So that sort of era, we're only about like 20 years after that, less than a generation. And you've got a lot of problems with piracy, and the Van Duel we're kind of kicking up. So the UEE wasn't able to afford to protect every single system as thoroughly as they'd like, because they just didn't have the money that they did under the Mezzer era, and they also didn't have the resources or the manpower. So what they decided to do was to create a ship that UEE and militia units could use on distant frontier worlds that didn't require a ton of maintenance, but could still do all of the stuff they needed to do in a pinch. A cheap, efficient, easy to replace fighter. And they called it the Volks Fighter, or People's Fighter ship. And this contest put together a bunch of engineers, including Jan and John Dredge, and several other members, friends of Jan Dredge, who decided they were going to pitch their own idea for this Volks Fighter contest. And what they cobbled together was known as the full term name for it, because it's got a full official name, the AS-1 Cutlass. This was built before Drake Interplanetary had been founded. It was specifically made to try to win this contest for the UEE. The problem was the UEE wasn't very interested in the contest, or in the Cutlass, and instead went with another ship which has kind of floated through the universe for a very long time, called I believe it's called the Wildcat, the Aegis Wildcat. Go down to, yeah, remember the name for it. Do. Yeah, the Wildcat. It's basically a forgotten ship, a part of a series of ships, including the Bearcat and other cat names for by Aegis, which are kind of floating in the background. Interesting stories about that one. I'd love to talk more about those in the future if I can get some stuff together. But as the problem was that it just didn't do well. Like the Wildcat never did well as what it was supposed to do. So as a result, Drake decided that instead of, or the people who made the Cutlass decided that instead of just kind of going away and just abandoning the Cutlass, they decided that they were going to double down on the Cutlass. So they created a company called Drake Interplanetary. Now, Drake Interplanetary, how do I put this? Drake Interplanetary was not chosen for any reason other than it sounded cool. There is no kind of deep background information on it. Drake just was founded because it was cool. And right away, the Cutlass absolutely blew all of the other ship sales out of the water at its first release. Like I said, it's a very dangerous time where there's a lot of piracy and Vanduul raids. So frontier militia and people who lived out in the kind of the frontiers of space needed a reliable ship, and the Cutlass did everything they wanted it to do. So it became super, super popular. And within 9 months, they opened 6 off-world factories and had headquartered, their main headquarters was in a place called Magnus in Borea. And the reason why it was called Magnus in Borea is because Borea was the headquarters of the UEE Navy for a very long time, and they abandoned it. There's a whole story behind the why Magnus kind of failed. But when Drake came in, they were just basically buying cheap, shipyards. They came in and bought cheap shipyards when they were purchasing. They're like, hey, we'll buy these shipyards because they're already there. They're already built for like larger ships and for lighter ships. We've got a lot of warehouses we can get, and no one wants them, so we'll do that. So they purchased these shipyards, started making Cutlasses out of them, and within 9 months they had opened, like I said, 9 separate. Yeah, nine different systems within 6 months. Forgot to turn off the alerts. My bad. Welcome from my stream. Apologize about that. You forgot to do all those other things. So, within a year, or within 5 years of their initial release in 2845, they became the 5th largest space manufacturing company in the UEE. It was a absolutely phenomenal success. And Drake would go on to produce more ships, and sort of strike a balance. Because one of the things that became clear early on was that Drake has sort of a chip on their shoulder. They're sort of the underdog because the UEE didn't choose the Cutlass. But the vehicle that the UE did choose is completely forgotten. No one knows about the Wildcat. No one remembers about the Wildcat, but people remember the Cutlass. And Drake leaned into that. Like, this is the ship too hot for the UEE to handle. And the UEE did not like that. So they began to kind of shun Drake, which then added to their bad boy persona. So a ton of how to put it, a ton of new people began to just start buying Drake just because it was its brand of being outlaws, and a lot of the new ships that are coming out were designed specifically to tread on or to undercut other ships made by Misk, RSI, Anvil, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of how they started to grow and become what they did. Now, there was a problem. During this time period, because of how cheap Cutlasses were to make, Cutlasses became synonymous with piracy. because pirates could get their hand on them for pretty cheap. They could maintain them pretty easily, and there's lots of parts they could get. And the turn of the 30th century, it was something like 3 in 5 ships. By the 2940s, 15,000 people died annually in Cutlass in outlaw raids, and Cutlass Blacks accounted for 2/3 of all ships flown by pirate groups. So Drake became very not just only outlaw in terms of like their style and their personality, but like actually outlaws. So Drake tried to do many different sort of PR spins. It's one of the reasons why the Cutlass Red, we'll get to it, was invented. It's why the Vulture was invented. But it came to a head on April 6, 2947, when a Terra Gazette undercover reporter managed to get a conversation, kind of pose as a potential employee, and got a conversation with Jan Dredge, the founder and CEO. And they brought up the issue about all of these pirate raids. And basically, Jan Dredge said something to the effect of, I don't care if they're pirates or not. We're not supposed to do background checks on these things. We care if they have the credits or not. And that statement became the downfall of Jan Dredge. It became clear that that Drake was not checking to see if they were selling to outlaws, and they got the scrutiny of the UEE, now like legal scrutiny beyond just like a teehee, we're the outlaws, teehee. So in early 2948, she stepped down as the CEO, the founder. Her son John took over, and within a few years, I think 2948 was when Andon Arden, the new CEO, came in. Now, Andon Arden is the current CEO of Drake, and Andon Arden is known as a fixer in the business community. His job is to come in and help save failing companies. And we've seen Andon Arden. If you've watched the introduction to like the Cutter thing for Invictus, I think it was like 2 years ago. Not Invictus, in IA 2 years ago, you had that. Yeah, hey, what's up? So yeah, you have this person's really invading my space. Please stop that. You have this new CEO is taken over, and they've really started trying to. Andon's been trying to. How to put it? Been trying to clean up the image of Drake, and so a lot of the ships we've seen released from Drake since Andon Arden's taken over have been mostly focused away from possible piracy and combat roles, and that's where we lead us today. So let's get over here and start off with the OG of all ships, of all Drake ships, the Cutlass Black. Now, originally called the AS-1 Cutlass, the Cutlass Black was built in 2845. We already talked about it for the Volksfighter contest. And the thing about the Black is that while it's changed over time, let's come back here, this is the main feature that has really become super important for most consumers who are interested in the Cutlass Black. This right here. It isn't just a fighter. It is a light hauler. This ship has internals for internal bay. It also has side doors which open up, which for easier kind of loading and unloading, as well as things like exfil. So if you wanted to do search and rescue, it becomes really good for that. If you wanted to do for exploration, you can get out in many different ways. There's a lot of advantages to this alone. And then of course in the front we have all the standard that all Cutlasses have, this little cockpit area, some beds, some gun racks, some storage, and it's got a pilot, co-pilot seat, and a gunner. So This ship strikes the balance between being a solo-operated ship and a multi-crew ship. And as a result, it's become very, very effective at what it does. And not only is it effective in lore, but in-game, as we've seen, it's a pretty popular ship for the same reason. So it's a great kind of balance between the two. But even by the 2850s, the Drake Cutlass was starting to become controversial because it was becoming so easy for pirates to use. So Drake tried to clean up their image. And what did they do? They released over... Where is that? It's all the way over here. Let's go over here and we'll talk about it, and then we'll kind of bump back and forth. The Cutlass Blue. So this specifically, the Cutlass Blue was specifically released as a means to clean up the image of the Cutlass. So it was built as a modification of the base Cutlass with non-lethal weaponry, and it was advertised specifically to law enforcement and the advocacy. It didn't sell with the advocacy, but a lot of local law enforcement agencies did want to get it. But it really didn't change a lot of minds. People said, oh, great, you've now got a bounty hunting security ship for a ship that's a pirate ship. Great. But what really changed people's minds was in 20... Where are you? In 2875, another documentary had come out talking about how Drake had knowingly just ignored background checks and flags that came up for selling it, and actually showed off a kind of like proved that they were connected to a raid that left 122 dead on an orbital outpost. So they needed something different. This is after they'd already released the Blue. They needed something different. And so in 2875, they worked with, at the time, a very kind of up-and-coming company known as Bioticorp to create this baby right here. Oh, does it get in? So, right here, we have these beds. These beds are Bioticore auto docks. They were state-of-the-art, cutting-edge in 2875 when the Cutlass Red was first being developed. And these are completely autonomous medical technologies which use nanites to help inject medicine to where they need to go. The problem was that people didn't really trust them. Drake thought that this would be a great thing to sell to create kind of a flying ambulance. It combined everything that Drake does with ruggedness and efficiency with something that was cause that everyone could get behind, which was ambulance, medical support. The addition to this was the what's called the NAV E7 long-range scanner. This scanner, which is at the very top of the ship over here. Yeah, I'm actually doing VoIP in game and in Discord. Over here, at the very top, you can see up here. This scanner is designed with the company that makes the systems makes the radar system together to create a new bespoke system for the Cutlass Red. The entire thing, everything in the Cutlass Red is custom. It uses the frame of the Cutlass, but it's almost practically a different ship based off all of the systems it has in place. And it fully went into production in September of 2876 and was planned to launch in April of 2877. However, something happened. A cruise liner, probably a Genesis Starliner, collided with a customs way station in the Corral system. Both ships' hulls were penetrated, and it set off a case of improperly stored explosives aboard the station and caused even more damage. Dozens were killed and hundreds were left stranded. It also destroyed the station's hangars, and emergency spacecraft and medical supplies couldn't get there. So, as a result, ships began to come together to try to help out the situation. And the ship that was the first to respond to the situation and help coordinate was a Cutlass Red. So the Cutlass Red, one of the first very public appearances of the Cutlass Red, really coordinated with its scanner because it could find the detailed locations of where people were trapped. And it had 2 bays to help it out. Basically allowed it to save a lot of lives. Later that year, a terrorist attack on the Governor's Council, which is basically the planetary government of Berea, nearly killed the entirety of the Governor's Council. But because of a Cutlass Red, which was in a nearby pad, they were able to drag the governors to the ship and save their lives, stabilize them to get them to a hospital and save their lives. So from 2876 onwards, Cutlass Reds began to show up time and again, always in places when they absolutely were needed the most, and they always overperformed based off of people's expectations. They were doing better than the Apollo was in terms of rescue and recovery. And this kind of blew up the sales of Cutlass Reds and actually started to change the perception of the Cutlass series in general for a time. Eventually, more pirate raids would happen and they'd lose their chapter. But as a result of these sorts of effects, the Cutlass Red is now the standard ambulance in the UEE. All hospitals have something equipped with a Cutlass-sized bay. So you can land a Cutlass in pretty much in emergency cases on top of hospitals because all of their pads are designed to hold Cutlasses. Even MISC's Endeavor platform, the Hope Endeavor, was designed with Cutlasses in mind. So the Cutlass Red is an example of a ship that effectively completely changed the narrative on Drake's entire lineup, especially the Cutlass, and it's a good example of like how that sort of evolution would happen at Drake. You'd have bad things happen, then Drake does something good, it becomes really good and really well known for it, and then bad things happen, and it just keeps going back and forth. So let's pull up the only other ships that really have lore to them. Let's finish off the Cutlass. Let's talk about the Cutlass Steel. So the Cutlass Steel, we don't really have a lot of information on it. It was almost certainly 2951 was when it was released. It may be an older vessel, but the key with this one is that it is a troop transport, a people transport. It is a modification of the Cutlass, like all the other ones, with seats in here. I believe these seat, 16, I think? It's 6 back here, and then these are 10, right? Oh, no, that's 12. Yeah, 12. 23? So, yeah, it's lots of folks. Plus, also, side turret guns, as you can see. And you have the not only do you have a turret, but the co-pilot seat also has replaces the back tractor beam of the Black with a gun. So it's been pretty popular with militia, generally speaking, but of course also has its pirate origins and such. All right, from that, let's head over to talk a little bit about the Caterpillar. So the Red was most places, then bad things happened, and then a few of those things were near Reds, and then the Reds could do cool things. Yeah, don't ask questions. Don't ask questions is why the Reds were always there. So, the Caterpillar. Jan Dredge is the lead designer for the Caterpillar. Just like the Cutlass series, she wanted to move the company forward with something that wasn't as militaristic as the Cutlass. And because the Cutlass had already been having pretty negative reviews on it, they wanted to try to spruce up the image a little bit more. So in between 2860 and 2870, she and her team who built the Cutlass decided to go with a new generation of hauler to kind of help deal with some of the logistics issues that were going on, especially with the lack of functional ships for hauling. And they wanted to try to do something a little different. And in 2871, they released the Caterpillar prototype. Now, when it was released at IAE 2871, everyone hated it. The comment, the most popular comment was something to the effect of, Drake released a ship that looked like it was released 50 years ago. A new ship that looked like it first released 50 years ago. And the issue was that it looked like an old rust bucket when it was first released. But that started to change because people looked at the price and realized that this old rust bucket was cheaper than most of the haulers on the market and offered pressurized shipping. And on top of that, it was modular. Each of these modules can be swapped out for something else. We don't know exactly what modules are available in the market because it hasn't been put in game yet, but all of these modules are swappable. So you can have up to minimum and maximum of 4 modules, but each of these can have different purposes. And suddenly people realized they could buy, especially Kovalex, who became a big fan of these of the Caterpillar, began to realize they could not only have a fleet of cargo ships, these ships could also be outfitted with other things and other means to supply and to kind of do other actions which weren't directly related to the cargo to cargo systems. So especially for frontier haulers, this became a fantastic deal for them to get because, again, it's really cheap. All right, with that being said, let's go over to some of the other ships that we know. Let's go with the Vulture because this is the only other one that has extensive lore. Oh, we can talk a little bit about the Dragonfly as well. The Dragonfly was also developed alongside the Caterpillar. This was designed as a recon vehicle, and this became the first real kind of sticking point. As you understand about Drake design, all of Drake's ships are designed to work with other Drake ships. Drake kind of prides itself as being a one-stop shop for all your ship needs. And they developed the Dragonfly as a reconnaissance vehicle and delivery vehicle for packages from a Caterpillar. The front of the Caterpillar is a dedicated hangar for these Dragonflies. But they also wanted to develop it so that the Dragonfly could also still fit in the back of a Cutlass, so that if you wanted to use them for Cutlass, you could as well. So this is sort of the theme that Drake comes at, is that all of their ships are designed to synergize with one another in some way, shape, or form. And that's kind of where the accusation that Drake has, that all the Drake ships are just Cutlasses but modified, comes from. Even in lore, everyone sees that like everything is just a modified Cutlass. And speaking of modified Cutlasses, let's look at an actual modified Cutlass. All right. Meet the VLT-3. The Vertical Landing Test 3 was a Cutlass that was modified specifically for vertical takeoff and landing to improve the thruster technologies that they would eventually add on to later Drake Cutlasses. But these had unique engines. These engines in the back were the engines that they had developed. Rotating, efficient VTOL engines was the whole idea. Now, on August 9th, 2895, a Terra-flagged hull sea freighter known as the Empire Slipper experienced a bunch of system failures and got lost and then disappeared. No one knew where it was. Now, the problem with it was that it also had on board, what was it? What were the things? Precious metals and rare one-of-a-kind artwork. And it disappeared for many, many months. And it was eventually discovered by the UE Navy. But when it was discovered, it found that it had drifted into an asteroid cluster right inside of a dense radiation band. So it was hard for ships to get in there. And on top of that, if you tried to EVA, you would get lethal dosage of radiation. There was no like EVA suit that was thick enough to protect you from the radiation that was there. So there was no way to recover any of the cargo, let alone the black box to figure out what had gone wrong on the ship. So MISC, being their ship, and they wanted to kind of repair their reputation because they didn't want people freaking out about whole seas just randomly malfunctioning and disappearing off the face of the earth, off the face of the map. They offered a reward, and that reward was something like several million credits. You don't see it in my notes here, but it was like several million credits. It was significant for any group who could put together a means to recover the black box and the artwork from the Empire Slipper. Drake had a very small version of the Cutlass, the VLT-3, and they had a mighty desire to mess with MISC because MISC doesn't like Drake because they stepped on them with the sales of the Caterpillar. It directly impacted MISC's sales of the whole series. And Drake, seeking to give a little bit more of a black eye to MISC again, decided, hey, let's do it again, but with style. So they took the VLT-3 and added servo arms to it to allow it to cut in and then kind of like reach in and grab the black box and the other stuff, the other kind of cargo, and then remove it safely. And it worked. 14 months after its disappearance, the Drake's crew initiated a salvage operation from a modular station, and over 36 attempts back and forth did they recover all of the flight recorders and all of the valuable cargo, and they returned it to MISC. However, MISC sued them because MISC found that Drake had copied the flight data from the ship before they handed it over to MISC. I think it was settled out of court, but it was definitely designed specifically to make MISC look bad. And they did. They then took the VLT-3 on ship kind of expos all over the verse, talking about the ship that was able to, like, famously able to recover all of these lost artifacts, these lost art, all that kind of stuff. So it was this big, long journey to kind of show off the ship. But then, as typical, some cutlasses decided to attack and kill, do a lot of damage and murder a bunch of whole sea owners, and the Cutlass became the black sheep it always has been once again. Now, fast forward to 2932. The VLT-3 got put back into storage, shoved somewhere back in Drake's warehouses and on Berea, and forgotten about. Fast forward to 2932. Aegis Dynamics reclaimer named the General Dogsbody discovered a missing colony ship that had been missing for hundreds of years. And in the process of discovering it, each of the members of the ship became millionaires overnight. Billionaires, I think, almost overnight. Each member of that reclaimer crew. And this set off a gold rush of salvage. Everyone was looking to get themselves a salvage ship, and nobody had salvage ships because it wasn't very popular other than Aegis. So what did they do? Drake remembered that they had the VLT-3, which had salvage arms on it, stuck in cargo. So they said, hey, let's figure what we can do with this. So they took the VLT-3 out, and then they began to work on it, which became the Vulture program. Eventually, they would completely scrap the idea of just modifying the Cutlass, and then you took the engines off the VLT-3 and built a brand new vehicle called the Vulture. So you've got these engines right here, which are the original VLT-3 engines, which were modified, kind of kept around it. But they tried to keep a lot of the sign. The main thing they did is they got rid of the arms and replaced them with these telescoping kind of scrapers. And this specific, like I'm going through right here, these sorts of like tractor fields that also would break up the debris as it was being kind of shaved off of the ship. And this right here would open up and it will mulch any sort of stuff that comes into it. Now, the unique thing about the Vulture that other ships don't have, other salvage ships don't have, is that it's solo. You can do it individually with a single person. And as a result, it has become very popular thanks to its soloable. It becomes, you don't have to share those profits with anybody if you find anything. And in an ironic twist, in 2941, they released a brand new version of the Vulture, the one we're seeing here. And in 2943, the UEE Navy purchased 300 of them. So you've probably been told that Drake doesn't actually have ships with the Navy. That's a lie. They do. The Navy does buy Drake ships, but they're not combat ships. So this vehicle right here is used for cleanup, battlefield cleanup after the fact. So.
But the question is, are they happy about it?
Oh, obviously not. But Drake is also definitely not one of those companies that's really interested in explaining that their bad boy persona is only a persona. They still actually sell to the Navy. So, yeah. All right. That's unfortunately the most we have on the kind of the lore of some of these ships. But I can tell you a little bit more about some of the other ships. Kind of we generally know when they were released. We also have over here the Buccaneer. Now, the Buccaneer is an important ship to understand because the Buccaneer... the Buccaneer was designed as a support vehicle for the rest of the Drake lineup. It is the only pure combat vehicle from Drake. Everything else is some sort of utility vehicle or has a non-combat profession. The Buccaneer is specifically a combat vehicle. Now, what it mostly does is it's Drake's kind of distillation of the Cutlass down to what makes the Cutlass an effective fighting vehicle. It is fast. It is somewhat maneuverable. It's pretty light in terms of it can't take a ton of hits, but it has an absolute enormous amount of firepower, and it's very simple to replace and repair. It uses a lot of similar parts to the Cutlass as well. And the thing about it was designed to be almost as fast as the Herald. This vehicle was designed to support every other Drake ship in the lineup. So if you are going out salvaging, you just need a Buccaneer to protect you in the frontier. And many of those parts are swappable because they're both based off the Cutlass parts. If you're transporting, say you're transporting large amounts of cargo from point A to point B, well, some of those parts on the Caterpillar also are shared with the Buccaneer. So you can easily cut down your logistics train a lot by using this. And like I said, it's as fast as the Herald. So you could use it to escort the fastest ship in the verse in terms of being able to go from point A to point B for info running jobs. So that's what this ship is. This ship is sort of the kind of glue that fits all the other ships together. It's the the missing piece out of all of the Drake's lineup to get things done. With that, let's talk a little bit about the Herald, too. The Herald. So we don't know a lot about the Drake Herald, but we do know that it's one of the only Inforunners in the verse. It is one of the fastest ships in the verse. And it is, like all Drake ships, kind of a utility ship. All non-dedicated Drake ships. It even has a little bit more utility to it. It is a dedicated Inforunner, but it also has the ability to broadcast and receive information. And it is a pure point A to point B ship. It's two crew, but there's a very small area inside. These here are the data systems themselves. So if you look at here, instead of having any of the data inside of the ship, all of the data is stored externally. So you, in these sort of secure boxes, which are difficult to get into. But it means that they didn't have to keep it inside and keep it cool and all these other sort of fancy materials. And instead, we've got some internal, I think this is the internal kind of drive as well. But instead, it's mostly just this. It is a small frame connected to a single Cutlass engine. So it could just go fast. In a straight line, point A to point B, you're never going to beat this thing. It's going to drag race beat you every single time. It's a little maneuverable, not great, but it's okay. And it has some defenses with it, with a single gun to it. But yeah, this is the Pony Express of the verse. If you wanted to get a message from point A to point B fast and efficiently, can't go wrong with the Herald. All right, now we're going to the Andon Arden era of Drake. Most of these ships that we're going to talk about now are ships that were built after Andon Arden became CEO, though the Cutter was technically first released in 2920. This is the new version of the Cutter, new and improved under the auspices of Andon Arden. It was released in 2951, I believe. 2952 is when it was released. And this new and improved ship takes a lot of design language and cues from the Vulture. Notice that the engines themselves are much more like the VLT-3 than they are like the Cutlass. And you can really kind of determine what era the ship is built from based off of its engines. If the engines look more like the Vulture, they're probably more influenced by early Drake designs, and from late Drake designs. But if they look a little more like the Cutlass, they're probably early Drake designs. And this in itself is a very good starter ship. It's a small little hauler, and there are multiple versions of it, including the Rambler, which is over here, and the Scout, which is over here. This is the Scout, I believe, right? Yeah, the Scout. Scout has a large sensor array, similar to the one that's on the Red, that can be used for long-range scanning for a ship that has the top amount of fuel efficiency and in terms of fuel range than any other starter ship in the class, any other ship in this class. And the Rambler has a full exploration or a full habitable area. It's got a small cargo bay, but most of the stuff is set aside for your living quarters. Got beds, you got storage units, you've got gun racks, you've got a toilet, a rare luxury in a Drake ship, a toilet. You even got a little a little desk. It's a great little personal exploration vehicle. All right. From there, let's move on to...
Help.
Is someone stuck? Who's stuck? No one's stuck. Okay. All right. To the Corsair. Gotta run back and forth all over this place with this one, but...
Drake's versatile combat-tested ships, and it'll be the Outlaws that'll holler
So the Corsair was released in 2951, I believe, as well, alongside the Cutter. And the Corsair is Andon Arden, like it's his design. Like, come over back here and let's look at these engines. If you look at the cowling of these engines and you compare it to the cowling of the Vulture over there, notice the kind of squarish top kind of covering over the circular nozzles, and notice how that's the same case on the Vulture over here. So this has all of the hallmarks of being built by the Andon Arden Drake Interplanetary. And another thing that's important noted is that this is a exploration vehicle. Now, there are some accusations that it's more than an exploration vehicle, but because it does have a lot of firepower, but exploration is dangerous. It has a very large bay back here. This can actually fit an entire Ursa in the back of it, but also has plenty of space for cargo. It has its own dedicated exploration room. Not a lot of people know this part exists right here. This is an EVA room. It has its own airlock. It has its own suit lockers. It has gun racks. And it has its own little external EVA hatch. So you can EVA to do repairs or explore without even having to decompress the ship. It has three. That's right, 3 personal habitation quarters for the crew, a mess area, and a little storage area back here. This is the bathroom. Might be the bathroom. Yeah, I think this is the bathroom. But you have guns over here, and then you have a secondary pilot's quarters here, or captain's quarters, and then your seats. So this is designed to, oh yeah, I'll show the piece de resistance. Come with me. All aboard if you can. Please don't break your legs. It even has roof access. So you can get a little bit more vantage point when you go around. This is, I would say, the top of the line, the most clear example of Andon Arden's influence on Drake. While this ship itself is very dangerous and still very potent in combat, everything about it screams exploration, pushing the frontier. And that's what Andon Arden wants with the new Drake Interplanetary, to move away from just the cutlass with other things and to become more unique and different. I'm going to go all the way down.
DefenseCon's a great opportunity to take a look at the real ships that are out there every day, defending your freedom.
All right. With that, let's go talk about the other future of Drake, because we don't have the Ironclad, but we do have the Kraken. Oh, the Mule. Let's talk about the Mule. I forgot the Mule. This is another example of Andon Arden's time. This is a ground support vehicle. Drake had only really made the hover Dragonfly before, but this is a warehouse vehicle. It is a all-terrain vehicle mixed with a forklift. It has these 2 forks in the front for carrying a 1 SCU cargo container. It also back here has another ability to carry another 1 SCU cargo container, and it has side saddles for up to 8 tiny cargo containers. One person can maneuver it. It is pretty freaking fast for its size, and does pretty decently on most terrain. So it is a kind of a frontier forklift, if you will. This one specifically was built in 2950s, I want to say. The Mule 2952. So yeah. So again, really leaning into that frontier design. That frontier will help you with non-combat roles. So now let's talk about the Kraken. Does the mule have a toilet? No, it does not. It's not a luxury Drake brand like the Corsair. All right. The Kraken. Now, the Kraken is an interesting thing. Because the Kraken came out during 2950 DefenseCon. No, it wasn't DefenseCon. It was during CitizenCon, I believe. 2948 CitizenCon was when it was first announced. The same year as Andon Arden became CEO, and you can tell this is again one of those Andon Arden projects because it's designed more around like a floating station than it is a pure combat vessel. The Kraken itself is designed as a frontier space station. It has multiple landing pads. It has an internal repair bay. It has a lot of space for the crew. It also has lots of cargo. It is a carrier, but it is also, like I said, a mobile station. And with the variant that they're releasing as well through the, I believe, the shipyards on Crusader, the Pioneer, the Privateer, the Kraken Privateer, which is actually being customized by the local Stanton customizer. What is his name?
Cousin Crows.
Cousin Crows, thank you. By Cousin Crow himself. And that was announced on 2949. The interesting thing about Cousin Crow is that Cousin Crow was a smuggler who worked out of the Low system and eventually got caught, went to jail, and then became kind of a reformed criminal. And his story got published on... he eventually opened up his own ship customization shop because he used to do that for smuggling vehicles when he was just a kid. Now, he was a kid when he did this. I believe he may have even been sold to the Banu, if I remember correctly. So he was a... he had a very rough childhood, but managed to turn around and instead of tricking out ships to be outrunning the cops, he was making unique liveries and other customs for legal people, for legal legal folks on Crusader. And his story got so popular and so well known in the verse that Andon Arden approached him and asked him to do their all of the privateers. So all of the Kraken privateers are made by Cousin Crows in Crusader. So, yeah. All right, let's go out here and we'll take a little question and answers of Drake, because that's Drake for so far. Let's stop right here for this one, which is pretty easy. So if you are in chat or if you're live, if you have questions about Drake or any kind of lore piece, let me know. Yeah, Cousin Crow. As we were talking about Bobby Wan, that it was designed with the consultation of Nampo Vasco, Cousin Crow of Cousin Crows. Why is it your favorite ship designer? Why is it my favorite ship? Because it is a perfect synergy of artistic storytelling, because it's they created the lore behind it to match with the style that they're going for and the gameplay they're going for. All three synergize so perfectly with Drake. It's the best sort of exploration of the Star Citizen universe in terms of just ships that you'll ever see. So, are there any mentions of Drake ships that haven't been released or announced yet? Yes, there is the Drake Lobster, which was owned by Silas Kerner, Silas Kerner has the only remaining prototype of the Drake Lobster. We don't know what the Drake Lobster is, but it is a thing. There are other modifications to the Cutlass that have been made. They're not as extensive as the blue or the red or the steel. And of course, there's the VLT-3, which eventually became the Vulture. But that's what we have so far. Question. What's the lore of the Drake armored command ship you talked about in the Ironclad being the Informer? So most of that lore was around the Cutlass, the Caterpillar. The Caterpillar was really the arm. They used this as a stand-in for the armored command vehicle for pirates. But it's clear that the Ironclad was really designed as a kind of to actually fill that role more specifically in terms of what people were hoping for. Hey, if I can ask a question about the new ship, does anyone know if both the Ironclad base and Ironclad assaults have retractable roofs? We don't. Last I checked, I do not believe that the assault has a retractable roof, but we'll have to figure that out. Do I own a Kraken? I do not. Let's see. Is there lore / history stories on the Herald running data missions? Not that we know of. Not that I've seen. Proper explanation, lobster. Yeah.
Do we have a guess of where Ironclad might fit in lore-wise as far as, like, time frame?
Let me take a look at the Ironclad's engines, because that's really the key. Like I said, the engines are the big kind of revelation of when it was built. If its engines look more like the Caterpillar, then it's around the Caterpillar. If the engines look more like the Vulture with the kind of the squared off cowlings of the engines, then it's probably that. Based off of what I can see, it's probably a pre and an Arden ship, because if the engines look very round like the Caterpillar. So my guess would be sometime between the end of the 29th and early 30th century. So 2890 to 2920 would be my guess for this. What kind of timetable do you think the production of the Kraken features functions for it to be in-game usable? I think it depends. It seems that CIG wants to fast track it because they want to do the Kraken. They seem to be indicating they want to do the Kraken after they do their RSI sweep. But it's still years. I don't think it's going to be available until after the Galaxy and the Perseus come out. So, but it's going to be before the Kraken.
Does Drake make anything other than ships and vehicles?
Not that we know of.
Duct tape.
Duct tape. They probably do. Even as a joke, they probably do. They do make a specialized spinal mount for the Buccaneer, which is Drake brand, but it's kind of they don't really make weapons or anything else like that. Go ahead.
Do you think they'll ever release the Aegis Wildcat or the original version of VLT?
Possibly. I think if they wanted to go crazy with the VLT, they could, because the VLT does, like, the way that it sounds like it was designed as like a planetary dropship, similar to what the Cutlass steel is, but much more in the way of maybe like a gunship, like a pure gunship versus the what we have with the steel, and with Drake's proclivity to do the whole package in one deal. I could see them doing something like reviving the old Drake Brutus design from the Next Great Starship and having that be the evolution of the VLT. In terms of the Wildcat, I'd love to see it, because there's the Wildcat, there's two versions of the Wildcat. There's an older version of the Wildcat and the one that was built for the Volksfighter contest. And then there's the Bearcat, which was the competitor against the Hawk. So I'd love to see the Aegis Cat lineup of ships coming out. So Someone is asking, how does the Drake interact with / relate to other manufacturers? Like, Misk hates them, but what about others? Drake and Anvil don't get along because the UEE doesn't like them to get along with each other. And they've actively competed against one another for bids. Drake and Aegis aren't very fond of one another for a similar reason. The only companies that I don't know that have specific connections with are like Greycat. I think Greycat and Drake have a pretty good working relationship with one another because of the rock. Because the rock seems to be at least partially designed to fit into a cutlass. And likely like Kruger, my guess, because I wouldn't imagine that Drake would turn down the ability to use Kruger parts because they're so prolific. So some Drake may be a Kruger company because Kruger also was from Berea, so they may have some of that connection to that. Other than the privateer, does Drake have any relation to the Stanton system, both legal and otherwise? Not that we know of, no. Magnus is one jump away from Stanton, though. Question: what roles do you think Drake can fill round out ship choices for future of the game? Pretty much anything, because Drake is very much a kind of just a frontier version of a lot of different things. So I could see multiple versions of. I joke about the Cutlass Purple a lot because the Cutlass Purple is in my idea is it's like the privateer but small, a kind of a commerce ship. I could see them do salvage land vehicles or repair vehicles because they do have repair in there. They could also do some kind of like luxury ships, which would be funny, but but I could also do ground vehicles, and there's lots of options for it. I think there's been a lot of call for people want to see a Drake branded Titan suit, which I could see as well. Brutus concept design was Drake. Yes, the Brutus concept design was Drake, and it actually shares a lot of familiar lines with the Buccaneer. Does Drake have its own shipyards big enough for the Kraken? Yes, they actually have the former capital shipyards of the UE Navy on Berea in the city of Newcastle, which was the capital main place where all UEE naval vessels were built for a while, and then eventually they abandoned it and went to Killian instead. So Drake just took over all of those old, decrepit shipyards and spruced them back up. We actually have images of the Drake, of the Kraken being built in one of these like big trenches, which seem to be these like dry docks for ships. Could the Ironclad be a carrier, and roughly how big of a ship can land? It could be. My guess would be the biggest would be like the Buccaneer, something that size. I don't think anything bigger than that would be probably difficult to do. Though they showed that something like 2 tonks can sit side by side, like 4 tonks. So anything that has the footprint of 4 Novas can fit in there. At least 2 Novas, if not 2.5. Because that's the 4 Novas is for the assault, which may not have the whole thing. Drake has so many utilitarian vehicles. Does it also have a mining vehicle as well? Not in lore, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Any comments on allegations that Origin uses a Drake Caterpillar self-destruct module on its 890 jump series of ships? Probably not. I mean, that definitely makes sense. Is there going to be more Cutlass ship variants? Probably. Do we know about how much the other Cutlass variants, perhaps a list of them in roles? Just the VLT3, and I believe there was one that was made for CitizenCon at one point. Like not CitizenCon like our CitizenCon, but like the inverse version of CitizenCon, which is sort of a celebration of Imperator Day and stuff like that. How would the Navy react when Drake would present a frigate or a destroyer class for the civilian market? Probably not well, but Drake does make sense to do that because of things like the Militia Mobilization Initiative. They couldn't really say anything because the RSI is selling Polarises, which are military corvettes to civilians. So, do you think Drake is helping the construction of the Retribution? No, probably not. They're probably one of the few companies that isn't involved because they don't have many, if any, government contracts outside of what they do. Would love to see Drake worth a good talk. I could see that. Do you think Drake will release mining vessel? Possibly, especially if it makes Bisk mad. Could it be possible to visit Drake's shipyards and Magnus in the future? I would love to be able to. That is one of the locations, the systems that's likely to be in the first wave of systems that come out after 4.0 is Magnus, and I'd love to see it. So, yeah, I definitely think could see Consolidated Outland and Drake having good relations with one another because Silas Kerner loves Drake. He loves the Drake style. He owns a prototype Drake vessel, so it's obvious he likes Drake. So, who would win in a fight, the CEO of Drake or Consolidated Outland? Hard to tell. They're both rich boys, and if I'd love to see a lore story similar to the Elon Musk versus who's the head of Facebook, Zuckerberg. How much people want him to do a cage match? I'd love to see a cage match between Silas Kerner and Andon Arden. That'd be a great showdown. I think Andon Arden probably has the edge, but then again, Silas Kerner does grow up in the frontier. Like he's a rich boy, but he comes from Space Texas, so he probably knows how to handle himself a little bit. I have a privateer, so I can take it to Crow and get the regular Kraken. We don't know if it's modular because it's a hull modification, so possibly, but probably not. But Silas has a southern accent, yeah, because he's from Space Texas. That's Bremen. Like I said, but he's also a rich boy from Bremen. He's like a super posh, pampered boy. Whereas Andon Arden is from Space Detroit. So who would win? A rich guy from Detroit or a rich guy from Dallas in a fist fight?
Does Drake have any kind of communication or social status with Origin, being that Origin's primarily race and luxury, but Drake is faster?
I think they might have a rivalry, but I don't think Drake has a racing team. That would be another thing I'd like to see Drake get into is racing. That'd be an interesting look. But no, they don't. As far as I know, they don't have relations with one another. Though there are some elements of Drake. Drake may use things like Origin engines at some point because Origin is an engine manufacturer first, and then they eventually became a ship manufacturer. Are there any types of boys from Bremen? Yeah, farmers. Bremen is the breadbasket of the UAE. Most food products that get made into processed food comes from Bremen. So cruise comes from Bremen. So does probably your double dog. Drake is racing. It's Dragonfly. Yeah, that's a ground racer though. I'm talking about like more like competitor to the Fury. Ooh, I got a full disconnect because I was standing still for too long. Let's go take a couple more questions and call it. If the Drake was to pair with one of the alien species, like Misk and the Xian, would you suspect Banu or attempt their own workaround with the Krthok? No, Tavaran. Drake would work with the Tavaran. 1000%. That's a match made in heaven. Because the Tavaran themselves are absolutely anti-UEE, especially outside of the UEE. But they've got a chip on their shoulder. And that's Drake. That's Drake. So, banned from DefenseCon. Corn-fed Bremen boys, yeah. Was there ever been a fight between the UEE and the Kraken? Not that we know of, because the Kraken is fairly new. It was released in 2948, and it may not actually be out yet, because the production facilities, just takes a while. It's the biggest ship that Drake has ever produced, so. Yeah, we know it's going to be even coming out after the Ironclad, so. Question: was there ever been a off topic? So you don't feel you need to answer. Does Kruger have any ships in the pipeline? Not that we know of. No. Have I commented on the Ironclad assault price increase yet? Yeah, a little bit earlier on.
They increased the price already?
Yeah, it's $10 more expensive than it was yesterday, but only on the credit version. The war bond's the same. Why does the Cuddy Blue have a different cockpit canopy? Because it was the first modification. It was the first ever Drake or Cutlass variant. And so they really went all in on it. And as far as I understand, the diamond laminate process, which was popularized by Aegis at the end of the Messer era, which has become the standard for all cockpit glass, my guess is that it's kind of expensive to do curved versions of it versus what Drake usually does. So they just kind of removed it from the red version because it wasn't because that was their first version. So they really they poured bunches of money into it, and it wasn't as successful as the red was. But the Scorpius Antares commercial, it's a commercial. Japan. I trust that commercial as much as I trust the NURSA commercial. Do you think the UE will stop Kraken sales in the future? Nope. What do you think Drake will get in? Do you think Drake will get into base building? Yes. Either with a vehicle or a small ship. I could see them doing a ship the size of a Cutlass, like a Cutlass version of the say like the Pioneer, something that's between the MCV and the Galaxy. When it comes to base building, do you think Drake would develop their own parts for bases? Yeah, probably. Maybe if not their own parts, they develop their own system for building them because they're very frontier oriented. So anything that could build or maintain vehicles or like buildings, I could see them doing. Any idea if we'll get an Ironclad commercial? If we get an Ironclad commercial, it'll be when it's released. So when it's completed and released. If glass is made in a vacuum, it's stronger than steel. I read that in Science Book a year ago. Oh, interesting. Question: what is the biggest ship that Drake is known to make? The Kraken. Does that mean Drake version of the Crucible is likely? Possibly. They do have repair facilities on the Ironclad Assault and also on the Kraken, so they do have at least some connection with companies that make those repair arms. It's important to note that a lot of the stuff that you see on ships, especially Drake ships, aren't built by Drake. They're built by other companies that Drake then uses. Even like Misk's mining arms and mining heads, those are all built by different companies. But that mining arm itself was built by a different company that then worked with Misk to miniaturize that mining arm. So almost all of the accessories outside of the ship hull itself are built by other companies. Yeah, subcontractors. But, it just makes a lot more sense to talk to a mining company who's dedicated to making mining lasers than it is to develop mining lasers from scratch with your own team without any experience. Same with things like sensors and like medical bays and so on and so forth. Any change will get anything from 1 to 2K SEU with planetary landing? Do you think there will be an Ironclad variant for base building? Possibly. I think that the Assault might be one that is used for that, but I could see them doing a variant for like full repair and base building. Yeah, he did just miss it and Mr. Games, but it will be live on YouTube after the fact. So, when making the Cutlass, Drake cut ties with the toilet contractor. Oh, it wasn't designed for it. It was designed to be a frontier fighter. Let's see if there's any other questions.
Oh, did you get to do the Idris tour yet?
No, but I'm going to be doing that later this week, if I can. So
Do we have that much time?
I think so, because the finale isn't until Thursday or Friday. So, and if I do the Idris tour, it will be recorded and then put up after the fact for those of you on YouTube. It's on Wednesday, so yeah, I might do it on Tuesday or Wednesday as a little hurrah. But it won't be on YouTube. It'll be recorded, and I'll put it up after the fact on YouTube. Is there a history of using Dragonfly to explore as exploration vehicle on new systems? Not that we know of. It is funny that the one story we do know about the Dragonfly is that the Dragonfly was a new vehicle and was brought to a combined Xi'an and human outpost. There's a planet that's inhabited by both humans and Xi'an on the border. So they have a really good working relationship with one another. They trade and help each other out. It's kind of like a coexistence, like a cohabitation situation. Like, you know, they're both. It's owned by both governments, and they kind of, you know, they both run the area. They have their own kind of jurisdictions and everything. But one settler got a brand new Dragonfly and drove it over to check up on one of the Xi'an settlements. And the people in the Xi'an settlement were so flabbergasted by it because they'd never seen something like it, because Xi'an design isn't designed for really luxury. It's designed for purpose. And so the idea of having a hover bike for just using for utility purposes never really struck them as important. So even though they are the like masters of anti-grav technology, they never thought about doing their own anti-grav bike, because they probably don't even have the concept of bike in their culture. So after the Xi'an got exposed to the Dragonfly, the settlers went back and talked to Aopoa and told them about their experience, and Aopoa then developed the Nox. So the Nox is actually a response to the Dragonfly. So Drake, of all people, beat the Xi'an to hover bike technology.
Listen, humans just know how to have a good time.
Yeah. When we get a functional game, also Anvil for life. Sometime before the heat death of the universe, Angriest Gamer. Would you bet on Drake towing vessel? Yeah, I could see that. It was mentioned that they want to finish their backlog of RSI ships before finishing the Ironclad. Do you know how many RSI ships are in that backlog? Yes. You've got the Polaris, which is coming out in IAE. Then you've got the Galaxy, which is a stepping stone to the Perseus, which is then those two things are going to help out with the Arastra and then the Orion. So it's 5 ships before we even get to the Drake ships. And the Galaxy is probably going to take less time than the Polaris did, because it's not as big, and same with the Perseus. The Perseus is only about the same size as a Hammerhead, but then the Arastra is a little bit bigger, and then the Orion is huge. So it's a mining platform is its definition. So the Apollo as well. Though the Apollo sounds like it's been in production for a bit. It's not. It doesn't seem like they're doing. The teams that are doing, say, like the larger ships tend to. I guess they kind of rotate them out a little bit every so often, but they tend to only have one larger ship in production. But the Apollo isn't a large ship. It's or like a capital class. So. At least you're honest and aware of the situation we find ourselves in. Star Citizen is playable, but it's not playable for everyone. And one of the things I constantly say is Star Citizen is a game that you either play it or it plays you. And some people can't handle that. So for everyone who's having a really good time and enjoying the game and having very little problems that exist, there's always somebody where the game is absolutely destroying them. It's reaching through the screen and punching them and then stealing their dog and burning their house down and whatever. There's always someone, if you say something positive about the game, there's always someone who comes up and talks about how the game is a dumpster fire of awfulness, but doesn't match with everybody. It's getting better, and the reality is that Star Citizen will always evolve and improve, and it's a lot better than it used to be a year ago and a year before that, and it'll be, by the end of this year, it'll be even better. Doesn't mean there's not going to be bugs, but it's going to get better, and it has been getting better. Performance is even better, even this patch. So, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to be perfect for everyone all the time. That's just the reality. Even when the game reaches 1.0, there are going to be people who just will not be able to play it. We've been seeing awesomeness of Drake lately, almost to the point where Drake Master Manufacturer. What's the downside of Drake ships? Right now, it seems that they're better than their competitors. They're built out of balsa wood and duct tape. They're utility, nothing else. So there's a saying that I've coined, which is Drake pilots are either good or dead. There is no safety precaution with Drake. They throw safety out the window for cheapness. So when we get things like the death of a spaceman in the game later, where you're going to have to regen, and that's going to hit your IVS score, and that score eventually goes down, you have permadeath. That is still in the game. They've been very clear about that, even with all of the kind of drama that's been going on about it. And Drake is going. You fly a Drake ship and you mess up, you're taking a one-way trip back to the regen facility. You ain't surviving that, and that's going to hurt a lot more than if you were able to eject and get help. So. Let's see if there's any other questions about it. But yeah, so that's basically what it is. It's not going to be as tough or as resilient as other ships. It's going to have more, probably break down a lot more than other ships as well. But the parts are going to be easy to find and cheap to replace. It won't be difficult to do. It's kind of like when you buy the cheap thing that costs you half the price of you buy a desk that's like $30. And you have to it's like, kit you have to put together versus the sturdy wood, $70, $80 desk that'll last you a long time. That $30 desk is going to break in 2 years. It could break in 2 days or 2 years. But it's super cheap to replace. Whereas that $70 or $90 one's going to last you a lot longer and probably get more value out of it, but you're going to have to spend more money up front. That's kind of Drake. Drake is the cheap, flat box. It's the IKEA furniture of ships. Question: is the ironclad going away from Drake standards as a whole? Armored as a thing as a sales gimmick. No, I mean Drake has always been touted as having armor on it. I think they're trying to kind of return to its roots of armor, but Drake having armor. But we'll see. Can you speak a little more on permadeath? This is the first time I've heard of it. So for those of you who don't know about this, I'll go a little bit of a lore kind of explanation. Recently in the lore of Star Citizen, they discovered a technology which was known as the Ibrahim Sphere. So the Ibrahim Sphere is made by Dr. Aka Ibrahim. He was trying to discover a way to bring someone back from brain damage. So someone who encountered a traumatic brain injury and, lost mobility or memories or personality from it, he wanted to be able to restore that person back to their original personality. And in the process, he developed a lot of very complicated scanners, and this put him on given to the attention of the UE military, who discovered a similar scanner technology on Vanduul ships. And after a raid in 2949, I think 2948, on a Vanduul vessel, they brought back a complete working version of this scanner. Ibrahim studied it and reverse engineered it and created a system, which is the best way of describing this is a soul capture device. It copies everything about you from your memories, your DNA, everything. It copies everything it needs to from your body and imprints it onto into a storage device. That storage device is then connected to your body through a connection through interspace. Now, interspace is the dimension that kind of sits below or on top of our dimension in the Star Citizen universe. Jump points, the points that let you go from point A, from two different systems, they're actually tunnels through interspace. So no matter where you are, you're always connected to this imprint. The further you get, the kind of more strain it kind of puts onto it, but you're almost always connected to it. And through a technology known as regen gel, you can actually print somebody from their imprint. Now, it only works if you sever that connection. The only way you can sever that connection through interspace, which kind of works like quantum entanglement, is the way it's been described. If you sever, the only way to sever that connection is if you die. So when you die, when brain death happens, your imprint is now readable. You can actually modify it. And what people do is they will regenerate a person from that moment of death back to like where they were. The problem is that the human brain is not used to dying and coming back to life. So every time that happens, a little bit of your brain gets messed up. So over time, you build up effectively what they're called trauma echoes, which are effectively PTSD, where your brain stops functioning properly, and you'll lose access. Like you eventually, like say you get shot in the arm one time, when you die and your arm is not functioning. When you wake up the next time, your brain feels like your arm is no longer there. It doesn't work. So all of the nerve connections that were regenerated don't work. So you have to get your arm amputated and then replaced with a cybernetic or a prosthetic of some kind to use, like a biotic. And that all ties into the gameplay. So effectively what happens is that in Star Citizen, you have two major health. You have your health system that you exist, that you're normal, healthy, are you injured, that kind of stuff. And the secondary system is known as your imprint viability score, which is this system that as trauma echoes build up, it goes down. The imprint viability score is your hard health bar. So every time you die and regenerate or die and respawn, your imprint viability score is going to go down depending on things like how far away you are from your regen bed, the quality of the regen technology you have. So like tier 3 is going to be worse than a tier 1 bed, and how recent the imprint is. All of these factors will matter about how much of that score gets hit. Eventually, your imprint viability score will be 0, which means you have no more respawns. So when you die, you have to re-roll a brand new character. When you create that new character, it will inherit all of the material and the ships and money and some of the reputation from your previous character, but it's considered a brand new person. So you will lose some reputation, and you'll also have to pay an inheritance tax, so you'll lose some of that money. Something they want to do sooner rather than later to kind of curb the idea of being able to backspace and travel around. So it's not really a permadeath, it's a light permadeath. It's a system that's designed around the idea that they can kind of tweak those levers for however the IVS score. So the IVS score could mean you live for 100 different times. It could mean you live 7 times. But they want to kind of really work it in there to make it work like that. Yes, and they have said that they want to have an ability where you can refill that IVS bar by doing certain missions or doing certain therapies and that kind of stuff. So you can like prevent yourself from death in that permadeath if you're smart. Kind of like movie The Sixth Day. It's very similar to like Star Citizen draws a lot on cyberpunk themes. There's a lot of cyberpunk themes because it's very inspired by things like Blade Runner. And so it's very similar to the altered carbon sleeves, where like, you have a device which basically copies who you are, and then you get put into a different body. But with Star Citizen, you can't actually put into a different body. You can be put into a replication of your own body, but it's different. Realistically, in lore, who is the real supplier of pirates and outlaws? Anvil, Aegis, Origin, or Drake? Seems like they pilot all their ships. Is that an oversight by CIG mission designers? I think they're kind of playing with the idea, but let me kind of walk you down the primrose path of this. Aegis makes sense because Aegis has produced so many ships over the course of half a millennia that there are leftover versions and surplus versions of every Aegis ship on the market somewhere. So it's pretty easy to acquire an Aegis vehicle like a Gladius because there are just so many of them that were made that you can find them pretty easily. Think of it as like the F4 Phantom in our day. They're everywhere because they built so many of them, and so a lot of countries buy them because they still work. Anvil is similar. They produce a bunch of civilian models, but they produce it specifically for the frontier. And so, who's to say F7C gets bought by a frontier militiaman, and then they get on hard times and they can't keep up the maintenance, so they might sell it to a friend, who sells it to another friend. You know, it kind of goes through a couple hands and then winds up in a pirate base. You know. And then Origin, similar thing, and Drake for sure. Drake is just, they've openly like just not asked questions when people purchase stuff, but same situation. It's cheap, and if someone might need to like get out of the game for doing what they're doing, they might sell it. So a lot of what you see in terms of the ships that are pirates use are probably secondhand ships, like ships that were purchased by somebody else and then sort of ended up into a pirate hands. Scooter, yeah. Scooter acquires his ships, doesn't ask a lot of questions before he gets them, and sells them for 50% off. It's like Toyota, if you know, you know, you know. Yes, the Hilux. Then there's stuff that's stolen too. Yeah, there's just stuff that's just straight up stolen. I do not believe that any manufacturer is specifically reaching out to sell to pirates. I think most of them are just either not asking questions or they just fell off the truck sort of situation. You said about selling. Will we be able to sell our ships to friends in game in the future? That's a question we don't know yet, because CIG has said yes, but there's the issue of like insurance and like legally transferring stuff. And I don't think CIG wants to be the ability for you to be able to purchase a ship with real cash and then give it to a friend for free, or, you know, sell it to them, because there's some questions about that. When it comes to like in-purchase ships, maybe. So not even Drake. Drake is mostly a don't ask questions sort of group, not necessarily we want to like give it to pirates. Their marketing and their media is really heavily kind of centered around the idea of frontier militia being like the everyman ship for the real humans of the UE, the real frontier lifestyle. Like when Drake sponsored IAE last year, when they asked, or last year or 2 years ago, they actually had a controversy because IAE lets the sponsor choose the theme. And so Drake's, and I am not even kidding, Drake's theme was fuck the government. Burn the government to the ground was their theme. When IAE was asked them, like, are you serious? They didn't even flinch. They just said, yeah, fuck the government. That's our theme. And then the IAE company, IAE kind of coordinated, said, let's not anger the UEE on this one. Can you like lighten it down a little bit? And the response was, okay, fine. Power to the people, which is kind of, it got kind of whittled down to that. But yeah, they straight up, that was their first idea, was just saying, fuck the government. Lightly screw the government. And if you go into the DefenseCon right now, you'll hear them saying like, "What if you're in trouble? You can call the cops. You can call the UEE. They won't show up. You'll be a flying mist by the time they show up. You can either do that or you can buy Drake." They're very, that's their kind of mentality, their motto. It's not really pirate. It's defend yourself with our stuff. Our stuff is designed to help you defend your life in a hostile world that wants to kill you. Yeah, while the fleet is blasting off, who's protecting you? Drake. That's who, exactly. Now, it's also important to remember that Drake is not a revolutionary organization. They don't want to overthrow the government. This is all branding. The name itself is itself a brand. They don't probably care personally about any of them. It's owned by people who are very, very rich and very, very powerful. They just like the brand, and they know people do too. So. It's like Hot Topic punk shit, but still fun. Yeah, exactly. The one who sells to both sides is the Castak Arms. That's a company I had to do a video on because they're fun to do. They will sell to the criminals, and then when everyone gets mad at them for selling to the criminals who are committing crimes, they then give free weapons and armor to the cops, and say, see, we're not bad, but you want to replace those firing pins? Give us a call. If there's going to be a match made in heaven, it's Castak Arms and Drake Interplanetary. No one ever uses a socialist agenda to further their capitalist goals, Paul. The firing pin's designed to fail after 500 rounds. Yeah, pretty much. They're cheap to purchase, but the only one place you can get them from. The Ironclad Assault is definitely a LST, a landing ship tank. Something like that, yeah. It's weird that it's not a military vehicle, though, because it's definitely not military, because Drake doesn't sell to the military, so it's definitely a civilian sort of idea, but... if someone trades their friend a ship for free, they bought for money, is that not just gifting your friend real money in real life through virtual middlemen? Is the concern hacking? The concern is things like taxes, because if you purchased it and then gave it to your friend, there could be some tax issues. There could also be some legal issues about gifting digital goods, because there's also some complications about that. There's also like CIG still has gifting, so you could just gift it to your friend if you wanted to. But if you're selling it to your friend, it's complicated. So there's a lot of other issues on that. When will they hire an executive level project manager to start accomplishing back end tech debt and numerous gameplay loops? Also, the basic stretch goals promised from the initial Kickstarter. I wouldn't expect any of the stretch goals to be made before 1.0. A lot of those stretch goals are pretty much just not going to happen. Because the game has changed so much from its original, scope. It's expanded so much in scope just because of planetary landing that there are things like the battle cruiser. I don't think CIG, because CIG initially was like, hey, let's do big ships. And when they did the Javelin, even today, CIG is like, we don't know how to make the Javelin fun. It's a huge ship that requires like 30 people to run. How are we going to make that gameplay fun? So, like, I think they're going to cut back on, like, the battle cruiser and the escort carriers. Like, I don't think you'll ever be able to buy them or even, like, fly them. So, if that's an official line of thought, I mean, they haven't officially said any of that, but there's definitely some stuff that's already changed from the original pitch. Like, survival has changed. Landing, for instance, was a stretch goal, and modularity were stretch goals, but they were originally supposed to be kind of after the fact. They even talked about like landing being a landing on planets being a goal that they would do after release, even when they were doing the stretch goals, and that came out in 2016. So there's just some elements which just aren't going to be in the release. It may come down in the later ones, but I think CIG is mostly trying to focus on the core gameplay loops that they're trying to build. Landing, yes, landing on planets. Because originally they didn't have procedural landing on planets. Originally, the game would only let you land on very specific locations. And in fact, landing was a cutscene. So if you look far enough back, the way that it was going to work was similar to Freelancer. This was effectively Freelancer 2, where you would get to a planet, you get through like a port, like a little like station. You'd go through the station, and you get a cutscene where your ship would fly down through the atmosphere, and then you'd eventually kind of be able to walk around in your ship. Your ship would be automatically piloted for you and then landed, and then you'd get off in a very small area, a landing zone, and do different things. And there might be some areas where you could do some slight free roam and do some sort of combat stuff, but it was mostly going to be focused on the sort of space experience. And then when Crytek started firing people when they ran out of money, or stopped paying people, CIG sort of kind of swooped in and gathered up a lot of, in some cases, the original designers of the CryEngine, and several of those people had produced a demo of procedurally generating an entire city a couple years before that CryEngine was doing nothing with. So they pitched the idea of being able to do procedural generated planets, and then being able to do fully landable planets with the technology that they have. And that's how we ended up with the People to the Planet demo in 2016. That was originally a post-release idea. Starfield is very similar to what Star Citizen was originally going to be. Yeah. So if you're wondering why Star Citizen's taking so long to develop, it's that. The game was probably in a similar position in 2015, 2016 as we were in, as the game was in like 2022, 2021. There were a lot of discussions and kind of working on things like wrapping up a lot of aspects of like getting towards the polish phase for Squadron and some other stuff like that. And all of that, they just stopped talking about it, because once they had People to the Planet, everything was thrown out the window, and they had to rebuild almost everything they already built from scratch because they had to accommodate planetary landing. Which is the reason why, if you look at the first landing zone, Lorville, and you look at the last landing zone, Lorville, the original landing zone versus the landing zones in like today, you can see how they've kind of changed from being just small little sections to trying to be bigger cities, because they realized they had a lot more places to play with. And that's why they invented things like the Dragonfly, because they didn't have a need for having ground vehicles, and now they suddenly had to need more ground vehicles. Oh, come on, we can't sit here and say that's why it's taken so long, that they threw out the entire game in 2016 and start from scratch. Yeah. Again, Starfield took 7 years to make. Games take a long time. Yeah, nowadays. Like, it's the typical is now 7 to 10 years. But we're actually finally getting server meshing this year, which just takes a long time. Star Citizen will have a 1.0 release in a couple of years, with some planets and stuff like that. But we're never going to see the 100 planets for like a while. It'll probably take a couple of years after that. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if your target audience is militia and low logistics zone to make same with armor component that are hard to come by. Recycled alloy isn't an all or nothing armor pattern. Makes sense. Yeah. If released in 2016, Starfield, like, I don't think it would. I would care. I don't think many people would. Do you think we'll see the working holo cartography tables from the I Held the Line this fall? Probably not. I think they have to do the new scanning system. Any other lore questions? Because if not, we can wrap this up and head on out. Thank you for watching, by the way. It's a lot. I know we got a raid from Meyer earlier, and I was kind of... So thank you for that raid, Meyer. And thank you for the resubscription, Pramster. And we've got quite a few people watching on YouTube as well. So thank you for that. For my casual day with Drake. All right, let's answer these two questions. How do you think the systems will be future post 1.0? Will the new systems be DLC or will it be a live service? Star Citizen's a live service game. It's an MMO, so I don't think there'll be DLC. CIG has talked about doing DLC, but the only time they've talked about DLC, like paid DLC, for like full content is playable alien races, which they've mentioned fairly recently as well. So, has Drake ever had involvement in a fight against Van Duel? Yes, I have. Drake did okay. Hey, Astro, I binged your channel for like the last 3 days. Thank you for watching. Any lore tours during the finale? If we can do, if the Idris tour is still going, then it'll be the Idris tour. Probably in Wednesday or Thursday. Tuesday or Wednesday. So. What game loops do you believe not necessarily expect will be done to the satisfaction for 1.0? Bounty hunting, cargo hauling, salvage, mining, mercenary work, like combat work in general, and scanning / slight light exploration, and racing. Those 7. I think that's really pretty much all of them. I can't think of anything else that would go on top of it. There are other things that fill in the gaps, like investigation, but a lot of those are just kind of offshoots of one of those other ones. And I also don't think exploration is what people think it is. A lot of people think exploration is going to be, exploring strange new worlds and making love to to purple alien women, but it's not. It's going to be mostly scanning for life forms. You're going to scan an area and update maps. That's what your main loop is going to be in space or in ground. Okay, this is the last one to go through because we're going to wrap it up this one. Do you think CIG will sell a limited version of Star Engine, like without meshing? No. Not until they could support it. Tell me about the purple alien women. I could, but knowing CIG, they're probably filled with acid. All right. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more content, hit the bell icon to be notified when these release. And of course, I want to hear your thoughts on Drake down below. Now, for those of you who are big fans of the Astropub, we've been here, our Astropub, the AstroHistorian, as we've been around for a while, and have been waiting for and bothering me, rightfully so, about when the part 4 of the complete history of Star Citizen lore series is going to come out. I'm here to tell you, Wednesday. I'm not joking. This isn't a delay. It's been out for Patreons for about 2 weeks now. It's been out for members since last Wednesday. So it's out on Wednesday. Everybody else will get to see it on Wednesday. Wednesday at like 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll make a premiere and everything else for it. So you will do it. When's part 5? Part 5 will probably be in August or September of this year. So... but yeah, we actually have multiple videos. I have the complete history is coming out on Wednesday, and then the Wednesday after that is when my look at the Virgil, the fall of Virgil, and it's kind of like a system survey, but it's kind of like talking about Virgil and the refugees of Virgil, what I call the children of Cyrene, and why it's so important. The fall of Virgil and the aftermath is so important to the Star Citizen universe. It's not as long as the other ones, but I'm also got a video that I'm working on right now, which is a look at the doctrines, the naval doctrines of humanity in Star Citizen, different eras and what they were doing and that kind of stuff. And then after that, I'm doing my Star Citizen's Darker Than You Think, the kind of the dystopia of Star Citizen. I'm also doing one on the food and drinks of Star Citizen. And of course, I'm doing a complete history of the Titanfall, of the wars of Titanfall. And I'll be doing a charity stream I haven't chosen the charity yet. So if you have an idea, please let me know in the comments below, to play the entirety of Titanfall 2's campaign live, raising money for charity. And it'll be done after I've released the Titanfall 2 video, complete history video. If you want access to any of those early, they'll be accessed on Patreon, and YouTube members get early access to them. Since it's now summer for me, because my day job is a teacher. Now my job is over for the summer, mostly. I still have some other things I got to do. I have a lot more time, so I'm going to spend a lot of time writing, recording, and editing videos and putting them up, but they won't be available for, in some cases, months after I've finished them. So if you really want that kind of early access, if you really want that kind of content, make sure you drop us $5 or so on Patreon or on YouTube. It means a lot to kind of get those accesses. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you for watching. And like I say every time, remember, ex Historia ad Astra.